We have a lot of people that make Mountain Week possible, including back home at JAARS base. In the local area, that's what really shines at Mountain Week, is seeing the community that over the past 50 years since JAARS first started coming up, of how they really are generous with us. 1973 is the earliest time we remember flying a plane up to this airport and doing some mountain flying. And from day one, we started meeting people and the community and building relationships. And we say we're building relationships, really. We came up and they accepted us.
They used to come up and they'd camp out. After a couple of years, somebody suggested, why don't we come in the hangar? And so they started really basing everything in the hangar. Everybody that's ever done the operation here is welcomed them in, and it's just been a real tradition.
They just became part of your family.
It's always real interesting to meet the people and then to know that, we're a part of keeping them safe and helping them do what they do so well.
They learn what we're doing and why we're doing it, and they catch that vision, and they just become the community that they are up here. Up in the mountains, people take care of each other.
There's a lot of runways around here. Not everybody is so free to offer them to people. There's a runway now that we're working on getting it ready, and one of the contacts at Foothills said you should call this guy, so I called him up and told him what we do and why we do it. And a couple of months later we met face to face at his runway, and he said, almost seems like there's something bigger making all this come together. We say we use airplanes to reach people overseas, but I think that's happening here just with the relationships, and people know what we do, and it fostering a little bit of hopefully seeds being planted in their lives. And the people that do open it up, it has to be the Lord. We were over at Friendship, which is one of the runways we'd have been able to get to the most. And I joked with somebody that we were kind of wearing it out. But Jim Huff, the owner, we got to talk to him for a while about the fact that we'd landed there the first time in 1985, right after he opened the runway. It's one of the most beautiful grass runways. It's like a putting green. He maintains it, and we're probably the biggest user. We're trying to say thank you to them, and they're trying to say thank you to us, and it's like they see it as their ministry. Their little piece of ground is helping reach people around the world.
Mountain Week has been like going to the next level. We're hugging terrain as close as we can while we turn in to land. And once we get lined up to land, we've been doing that all of orientation. But the part where you're really close to trees and turning to land, that part is really new and challenging.
So Mountain Week is sort of like our end wrap-up of all the training we do with orientees. We bring them up here to try and test out what they learned down in the flatter country and apply some of those principles in a little bit harsher terrain, showing them that the things work. And a lot of these guys are going to mountainous nations, so this mimics it a little bit.
Brown is one of the airstrips we go to. So as ground crew, I go to the airstrip, and when I get there, I report back to the crew that's about to come and do the training to let them know the actual conditions. This last week we've had a lot of bad weather, and sometimes that has meant we couldn't fly, but it's actually given us some real live weather scenarios with the clouds when it was just good enough that we could go, say, fly up a valley in the mountains where the clouds were actually just in the ridge tops of the mountains, but a valley was wide enough open that we could maneuver in it and train that way and teach the pilot to evaluate the weather and safely pass through a gap. It's been good to have some actual weather to do that in this past week.
Strawberry Ridge is one of the most recent additions that we've had. And that again was through the community. The Montague family knew about the runway, and after church one Sunday they're like, we know there's a runway up here somewhere, and we went driving up the hills. And then about 4 months later they called me on the phone, and they had been eating dinner at the Little Switzerland Cafe, ran into this couple, and they introduced themselves, and they lived at the runway at Strawberry Ridge. That's Bob and Petty Lance.
This strip emulates a lot of the strips in Indonesia. A really steep runway, and it's a one-way runway. Once we told them who we are and what we're doing, and that we were doing professional training, they allowed us to come up there. We're basically just checking out what's the current winds, make sure that it's clear, there's no animals on the runway. Every landing you have to be watching for that. Our biggest obstacle last night was 2 rabbits on the runway.
it's beyond even what just Bible translations, communities. It's being able to give people access to things that they don't normally have. And so people usually are quite excited to get on board with that.
We need a lot of support people that even aren't pilots and mechanics. We need people with gifting like managers, supply people, IT people, because right now all of our flight instructors, all of our pilots and all of our mechanics wind up doing other administrative work, which they're very capable of doing, but it's taken them away from the other skilled labor that only they can do on the aircraft.
It takes a team. There are many who are affected, and our prayer is believers and non-believers alike would be impacted by the gospel. The heartbeat is to serve people, and JAARS is a place that has worked hard to be excellent in aviation and in aviation training.